everybody, welcome back to Darvanalee Designs Studio. For those that don't know, my name's Nicole Reed, and today we are here to make the second block in our quilt block challenge that we have running over in DD's Facebook group. Today I'm doing a block, yes, but I'm actually going to turn this one into a mini quilt. So this block is actually 30 inches big. So if this is something that you're interested in, stick around, give us a thumbs up, don't forget to subscribe, and hit that little bell icon beside it, and then that way you won't miss out on any future posts. Alright, so basically you're going to need a few things. You're going to need, of your white fabric, you're going to need about 23 inches of that. It's about an inch or two bigger than what you actually need just to straighten up edges and all the rest of it. Of this green fabric here, you're going to need about 15 inches of that. Of our green dot fabric, you're going to need about 8 inches of that. Alright, so we have some cutting to do, and I'm going to go through them, and I'm also going to list the cutting instructions down below. Alright, so basically once you've got your general sewing supplies, so your cutting rulers, marking devices, thread snips, working iron and ironing pad, we're about ready to start. Alright, so we're just going to set these things aside, and we're going to go through. You can see here I've got all of this numbered. Okay, so blocks, fabric 1 and 2, I'm using a solid green with like a chevron pattern on it, and my white fabric, and they need to be cut at 14 inches square. Okay, and you'll need 2 of the green and you'll need 2 of the white. Now you will have a couple of squares left over from that, but that's what we need at this point. Alright, number 3, we're going to need 5 6.5 inch squares. For number 4, we are going to need 2 at 2.5 inches by 37 inches. And for fabric 5, which is our green dot, we're going to need 1 at 2.5 inches by 37 inches. So if you just cut that off the width of the fabric, that'll be fine. Same as the white one. And for 6 and 7, we are going to need 2.5 inch strips, okay, measuring 21 inches. So you'll only need 1 in the white, and you'll need 2 in this one here. Now I'm going to put all of those cutting instructions down below. The first thing that we're going to do is we are just going to move our fabrics off to the side, keeping our numbers in place because we don't want to get them confused. And we're going to start with fabrics 1 and 2. Alright, so we can remove those. And what we're going to do is we're going to make some half square triangles, and they're really easy to make. We're going to use the quick method. So from these 2 squares, we are going to get 8 altogether out of 1. Okay, so you can see here I've done some off screen already, and I'm going to show you how to do that. You can also see this method done in the first video, which I will link up above for you. So basically what you're going to do is you're going to cut your fabrics. I'll just give that a press to get that crease out, and you're going to put your green fabric right side facing up, and then you're going to take your white fabric and you're going to place them right sides together. Now you can see on the back here I've actually drawn some lines on it. Alright, so get that about centered. Okay, I think my green fabric is slightly bigger, but that's okay because we can trim up in just a second. Alright, and sometimes it's a bit better to make them a little bit bigger if you're not sure. So you can always make it 14.5 inches if you want to. That'll give you enough room to square these up. Alright, so basically what we're going to do is we're going to make our half square triangle, and all we're going to do is grab our marking device, okay, and we're going to place our ruler from corner to corner, and we're going to draw a line, and then we're going to do exactly the same the other way. Now, when we head over to the sewing machine, because we are working with a large piece of fabric here, we want to place some pins in there. But I don't want to put them on the line. Okay, I'll just put a couple in here. It just helps it to stay still, not move on me. Okay, so once you've done that, we're going to head over to the sewing machine, and we're going to stitch 1/4 inch on either side of this line, going this way and then going this way. Once we've done that, we'll come back and we'll cut it up, and we'll already have our 8 half square triangles out of this one block. Now that this is sewn, we have to do some cutting. Basically what we're going to do is we're going to line up our ruler, and I'm going to use my square ruler for this one. Okay, and I'm going to line this up on the 7-inch mark. Okay, and I'm lining it up with my white fabric because my green fabric is slightly bigger. Okay, and I'm going to line it up down the bottom here as well. Can you see that there? No, we'll just slide that up a little bit. Okay, so I've lined up my ruler on the white fabric. Okay, now this is 14 inches, so we need to cut it in half. And I can see here that it's going through the junction quite well, so I can just, and then slide it up. And then I'm going to do exactly the same this way as well. Lining up, it's all lining up down the bottom there. All right. So we've cut, now we've got 4. The next thing that we need to do is cut our half square triangles. So I'm just getting rid of my rulers. And then we're just going to place our ruler on that marked line and cut it in half. And there we have our half square triangle. All right, so next we keep doing that until we've cut them all in half. And then we will press them. Now, last fortnight when I did the block, I actually pressed my seams open because I was doing a smaller pieces. This time I'm using such large pieces, I will actually press to the dark side and then we'll square them up. And I press before I square up. All right, so let's grab the iron. And to make this process super quick as well, we want to press to the dark side. So when you want to press to whichever side you want your seam to go to, that fabric needs to be on top. So because I want to press to the dark side, I'm actually just going to lay all of my half square triangles, which are 8 of them. And we do only need 12 for this block. So we've got a few left over. You can set them aside for another project. Use them in a table runner or something like that. All right, so all my fabrics are facing up to the direction that I want it to go, and then basically I just set that seam and then roll it back and then set it aside. And you're going to repeat that for all your half square triangles. Now, as I said, we only need 12, so you only need to press 12. All right, so I'm going to continue doing that, and when we come back, we'll move on to the next step. All right, so we have our 12 half square triangles, and now we need to square these up. Now to do that, it's super easy. I have this little, and they square up to 6.5 inches. I've got this little ruler here and it's got a diagonal line on it, so it makes it nice and easy to line up. And all I'm going to do is place that ruler on there, and because it's 6.5 inches, I don't have to do much worrying about measuring or anything like that, but I want to make sure that this here, this diagonal line, is lining up on my seam. And you can see there that I don't really have to cut much off, if any at all. There's just a little bit of a smidgen on this side. So all I'm going to do is go down this side and then across the top without moving my ruler, get rid of all of that. Then I'm going to turn it around, and this way I've got a nice clean edge that I've just cut, and I can line the edge of my ruler up on that, making sure that this diagonal line is lining up on my seam, and then I can trim off the excess off this side, which, as I said, is not a great deal at all. So it's basically just got rid of some little bits of fabric, and we've got no dog ears, and so I'm going to repeat that with the rest of them, and then I'll be back for the next step. Now that you've done that, we can set these aside. So you should have 12 half square triangles, and we're going to move on to the next step. Next, we're going to take fabrics 4 and 5, and we're going to make a post rail. So to do this, and it's a super quick method this way, basically what you're going to do is you're going to lay your number 5 fabric down, and then you're going to take your 2 strips of number 4 fabric, which is your background fabric, and we are going to make a post rail block. So what we need to do that, we need to head over to the sewing machine, and we're going to sew these together. So we're going to take number 4 fabric, and I've cut these a little bit longer than I need. Helps if we have it the right way. and we're going to stitch 1/4 inch seam allowance all the way down the strip. Once we've done that, we'll open that back up, and then we're going to take the other white strip and we're going to add it to the bottom of our number 5 fabric, and we're going to sew that 1/4 inch all the way down. Alright, so I'm going to head off to the sewing machine and do that, and I'll be back to show you how to subcut it. Now that we've sewn this together, you can see here we've got our strip unit. We need to press it. So using our tip of which way we want our fabric to go, we have that on top. So I'm going to press my fabric to the dark side, which is my pattern piece. So before I press it over, I'm just going to set that seam, and I just do that by running the iron across that seam. And that just gets it to settle down a little bit after sewing. And then all I'm going to do is roll that back on itself and press. And I'll do the same for the other strip. And then that way our seam has gone to the dark side. Alright, now that we've pressed, we need to create a straight edge. So basically all I'm going to do is grab my ruler and I'm going to place that down. And I'm just going to straighten that up. So now we've got a nice straight edge. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to cut 4 6.5 inch squares. Lining my fabric up. 1, and you can see there it's got a little bit, it's not so straight now, so I'm just going to trim a little bit off, and there's enough fabric here for you to do that. Sometimes it gets a little bit wonky. And then we'll do another one, and that's our 4 there. Next we're going to cut 4 2.5 inch strips off this. Okay, so lining up 1 2.5, lining that all the way down, and we're going to cut 4 of those. Alright, so you only have a little bit left over, but we have 4 strips like that and 4 squares like that. Alright, now we're going to move on to the next step. Set them aside. We're going to take fabric 6 and 7. You'll have 1 strip of white, and of 6 you'll have 2 strips of that, and these are 21 inches in length. And what we're going to do with this one is we are going to do exactly what we've done with the last one. We're going to make a strip set. So to do that, we'll take our number 6 fabric and place it right sides together on our 7, so 1/4 inch seam all the way down. Once we've done that, open that back up and then do the same thing again on the other side, using a 1/4 inch seam allowance and going all the way down. Once you've sewn that together, you're going to press that with the fabrics going to the dark side, so they're going to go to the spotted fabric. And then we are going to subcut. Now that we've sewn that together and pressed it, and we've pressed to the dark side, so you can see there it's sitting nice and flat. I've also straightened up this edge here, and now we're going to cut or subcut 8 little units at 2.5 inches. Okay, so just lining up your 2.5 inch mark. And we're going to cut 8 of those. Alright, so that is our 8 units there. Next we're going to make our 9 patches, and we're going to make 4 of them. So grab your first set that you did, and that is our centerpiece, and then we're going to take 2 of these and we're going to attach them together, and we're going to make 4 in total, exactly the same way. So basically all we're going to do is we are going to give that a press, make sure everything is cut nicely, and then we're just going to join our pieces together. Now we don't have to worry about making sure everything's pressed out the right way, because of the way we've pressed previously. It'll make it nice and easy. Alright, so the first thing that we need to do is join the middle one to our first one, and then once we've done that, we'll open that up and then we'll attach this one to here. So we want to make sure that we have got our seams lining up, and we just lay that on top of one another, and we're going to use our fork pins and we're going to nest our seams, and then we will place a fork pin on either side. and then the same down this end here. Okay, now if you find that your seams aren't lining up, just give your little sections a press and make sure that everything is laying nice and flat. You may not have pressed it out fully, and then that way it'll line up nicely for you. All right, so once we've done that, we're going to sew a 1/4 inch seam allowance that we've used throughout the block, and we're going to stitch those together. And as I said, we're going to attach, once we've done that, we'll attach this one to the opposite side. So I'm going to head off to the sewing machine and do that. All right, so that is our 9 patch, and we're going to repeat that with the remaining strip sets that we've got. And we're just going to press that so it's sitting nice and flat, and we're going to press to our outer strip sets. Okay, and so that's going to sit nice and flat. Now you may need to trim this up a little bit, but you can see there we've got a nice 9 patch, and as I said, we're going to make 4 of those sets. Right, we're now ready for assembly. We need to make some components for our corners and our center strip. So the first one that you can see here, I've just labeled them 1, 2, 3 and 4. The first ones that we need to work with are number 1 and number 4. So we can set these two aside for just a moment. And we're going to make our cornerstones of our block. And to do that, we're going to take 3 half square triangles, and we're going to make 4 of these components. Okay, so we're going to, for cornerstone 1, which is our top left hand, we are going to place our half square triangles like so. And then we're going to take one of component 4 and pop that in there like so. Okay, so that is what our cornerstone is going to look like. So that's our top left hand corner. Our bottom left hand corner will be like this. Okay, so that is our top and left. There, that's how it's going to get sewn. I'm going to set that aside. And for our top right, our half square triangles, and our bottom right, our half square triangles are going to come in like this. Okay, and so you want to repeat that for 2 of those, and then 2 of the first units that I showed you. A little bit tricky because it is a bit big, so I can't lay them all out. Alright, so all we need to do is lay these on top of one another, and we're going to put a couple of flat pins, and we're going to line our raw edges up, and that is the side that we're going to stitch on. So remember to always put the pins on the side that you're going to sew on. I do apologise for the lawnmower in the background. I have repeatedly asked my neighbour if he can mow on a different day, but he just refuses to. Alright, and we're going to do the same thing. He always seems to do it on a day that I'm filming, because I have set days for filming. So I do apologise if you can hear that lawnmower. He'll stop soon. He's got a ride on, so it'll go quick. And again, we're just going to pop a couple of pins in there, and I'm just going to do the same again, setting those aside, and then that way I can chain piece these through. Now we're going to head over to the sewing machine, and we're going to do a 1/4 inch seam allowance, and we're just going to chain piece those through, and then we'll come back and put our blocks together to make our cornerstones. Now that we've sewn those together, we need to press them. So we can see here that we've got our components, and I've already pressed the other ones. This is our last one, and you press them all exactly the same. Now we want with our 9 patch one, we want the seam to go towards that. So we're going to have that on top, and then we're just going to roll that back and give it a press. And we'll set that aside. And then for our half square triangle component, we want it to go to one of the opposite way. Okay, so we've got one seam going this way. I'll flip it over so you can see. So we've got one seam going this way and one seam going this way. Okay, and now what we're going to do is we're going to join these pieces together. All right, so I'll just get rid of this. And as you can see, we've got a bit of a seam to line up. So what we're going to do is we're going to lay them right sides together with all the raw edges touching. Okay, I'm not going to worry about what's happening down here. I'm going to be focusing up here at the moment. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to lay that on, and we're going to try and nest our seams. So I can see that this center seam is nesting up nicely, but now I want to match up these triangles so we don't lose our points. So I'm going to bring in the pin, and I'm going to bring it out right where that white is there. Okay, and then I'm going to take it in to where the green stops. Okay, and through to the other side. Now what that's going to do is that's going to line up my points, and then I'm going to get my pin, and I am using straight pins for this one because it's easier to do it with these. And then I'm going to lay my pin flat, and what that will do is now line up on this stitch seam here, and that's where I want my pin to come out. Now what that's telling me is that I've come in on my points, so I'm not going to lose my points. We're going to use a 1/4 inch seam allowance, and I know that my blocks are straight because I've got the pin coming along that seam. So you can see here it's on this seam, and it's also on this seam here, and you've seen me push it through from one point to the other point on the triangle, and that's going to help us get a really good lineup of our blocks. And as long as we keep true to our 1/4 inch, we shouldn't lose our points. Okay, now at this point in time with these sort of ones, you can chain piece these through because you're going to match these up exactly the same. And basically I like to put a couple of pins along here just so I don't get any movement in case it moves this up here. So I generally just put a couple of pins in just to hold everything in place to make sure that all my raw edges are lining up, and I just use straight pins for that, and I just put 2 on each side. And now make sure that you do use your 1/4 inch seam allowance and take it nice and slow. Okay, when you get to this joint here, I tend not to take my pin out because every time I take my pin out I have more problems with things shifting. So I tend to come right up to the pin, and I might stop just before it with the needle in the down position on the sewing machine, and then I will remove my pin and continue on. These ones I just pull out as I go. Alright, so I'm going to continue putting my components together. I'm going to head over to the sewing machine, use my 1/4 inch seam allowance, and then our cornerstones will be done and it'll be ready for final assembly. Now that we've got these sewn together, we just want to press them, and we're just going to press them with the seams going up towards the half square triangles on all our components. So I've already done that off camera, and our components should measure about 12.5 inches. All right, set them aside, and the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to get our strip sets and our square. Right, now we need to make our next component for the final assembly. I'm going to take fabric 3, which are our white squares that we've had sitting there the whole time, and we're going to take our strip sets. And basically what we're going to do is we are going to do these all exactly the same, and we're going to chain piece them through the sewing machine. You're going to set one of your blocks aside because that is our center block, and we don't need that right now. We just need 4. And you're going to take one of your squares of number 3, and then we're going to attach one of our strip sets to the bottom of it. Okay, and we're going to do them all the same. Then we're just going to pop a pin in there so we know what side we've got to sew on, and you're going to repeat that with the remainder, making sure all your raw edges lining up like as always. And we're going to use a 1/4 inch seam allowance, and we're just going to sew straight across. Alright, so let's head over to the sewing machine, stitch that together, and then we will be ready to make our centerpiece. Right, so we've sewn our pieces together, and now what we need to do is press them, and we are going to press to our strip set. So set that seam and have it on top, and then just roll that back. Alright, you're going to repeat that with the remaining 3 that you have, and as you can see I've already done that. Alright, so now what we are going to do is we're actually going to make our rows. So starting with our centerpiece, we're going to take our remaining square, and then we're going to attach 2 of our units to this. So we want our squares to go to the outside. So hopefully this will fit all on camera to show you, and I'm going to show you the individual strip sets as we go. All right, so basically what we're going to do is we're going to take our centerpiece and our side left piece, and we're going to put them right sides together, and we're going to pop a couple of pins in there. And to save a little bit of time, I'm actually going to reopen that up with the pins in it. And then I'm going to put this side onto here as well. Okay, and just lining up our raw edges. Making sure everything's lining up, and pop a couple of pins in there. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're going to head over to the sewing machine, and we're going to stitch a 1/4 inch seam allowance, both where we've got our pins, and that's going to create our centerpiece. And then we're going to come back and we're going to do our first and third row. All right, now that that's sewn together, we're not going to press it just yet. We're just going to set it aside for now, and we're going to take one of our strip sets that we just recently made, and we're going to attach our cornerstones to it. Okay, so we've got one going this way. Just get this stuff out of the way, and then we need another one. Okay, so we've got one going this way, we've got our centerpiece, and then we've got another half square triangle unit going this way. All right, so now what we need to do, we've got quite a few seams to match up on this one. Okay, so all we're going to do is we're going to take our centerpiece and bring it over to here, and we're going to match this seam and these seams here. We're going to use our fork pins for that, because we know that that helps us with everything staying in place. And then, like I did with the center one, I'm going to attach this piece on, and I'm going to put the pins in and head over to the sewing machine and do it. But before I do, I'll also do my bottom one to show you how to put that together as well. All right, so just right sides together. Because of the way we've pressed, we know that our seams are going to nest really well. We've got them going in opposite directions. I'm not worrying about what's happening up here or happening over here at the moment. I'm just focusing on this first seam, and I'm going to get a fork pin, and I'm going to pop that in. And then I'm going to come to the next seam, and I'm going to nest them together, and I'm going to pop a fork pin in. And the same again. Making sure that all our raw edges are lining up as we're going along. And because this is such a large piece that I'm going to sew, I'm going to put a couple of flat pins in as well, just to hold our corners together and our raw edges together up here. Okay, and I just remove them when I start to sew at the sewing machine. All right, so that's that part done, and then I'm going to do exactly the same with this piece over here. So again, we're going to place our right sides together. If you found that your seams have moved or anything like that and they need a bit of a press, give them a press, because it will help, making sure that everything's going the right way. All right. All right, so that's row 1, and we're going to do exactly the same with row 2. Okay, except this time our half square triangles are going to go the opposite to what we just done. Okay. So our row is going to look like that. And again, we're going to line up all of our seams. Okay, so placing that there. Okay, so we're going to head over to the sewing machine, and we are going to stitch 1/4 inch seam allowance on where we've pinned, and the same as this one, and then we'll end up with a nice row. And we're going to repeat that for row 1 and row 3. So now we have our 3 components. We've got our bottom row, which is row 3, and we have row 1, and we also have row 2. All right, so we are up to the final assembly. Now, as you can see, this is a decent size mini quilt. I'm not showing you today how to quilt it. I'm just showing you how to make the block. How you quilt it is entirely up to you, because everybody's different. For me personally, I think I'm going to go with some line quilting on this one. Maybe some triangles or something along those lines. But first of all, we need to assemble our block. So just move away row 3, and we're just going to focus on row 1 and 2. All right, but we need to press them. So now what we want to do is we want this middle seam here. Okay, we want that to go to the outside, and we want this seams up here to go to the inside. So to press those in place, and then we'll do exactly the same for the bottom row. It'll go in towards this component here, and the center one, we're going to have it go out. All right, so I'm going to do that first before we sew it all together. And now what we need to do is we are going to have to align up all of these seams. So basically I'm going to start at the center and I'm going to work my way out. So lay them right sides together and nest our seams. And then basically what you're going to do is you're going to line your raw edges up all the way along, and then you're going to nest all your seams first, and then we'll add extra pins in to hold it in place so when we go over to the sewing machine it won't move on us. But the main focus is all our seams, making sure that they are all lining up. Okay, so you can see here that I've got all the fork pins where all my seams are. Okay, and then I've put some flat pins in just to hold the rest of it to get all our raw edges together. I'm going to repeat that for the bottom row as well, and we're going to use a 1/4 inch seam allowance. The only difference in this seam is I'm going to backstitch at the beginning and at the end because I'm going to be moving this around a little bit. I'm not putting a border on it or anything, I'm just quilting it how it is, and the binding will become the feature. So basically I'm going to use the spotted fabric for the binding, but just make sure that you use your 1/4 inch seam allowance, and you just take it nice and easy when you come up to these seams, because they will move if you move the pin out too quickly. So just be very mindful of that. As I said, I'm going to do this, and then I'm going to repeat the exact same thing with the 3rd row, and then our quilt is finished. All right, so we have now finished our block. Not that I can fit it all on camera, but anyway, as you can see, that is our block. We've matched up all our seams, we've got rid of all our long threads, and now just quilt as desired. Basically, as I said, basically I'm just going to be quilting this with some line quilting, maybe some triangles or some hashtags or something like that. And yeah, I'm just going to give that a quick quilt, and then I'm going to use my quick binding method, sew it on by machine, and I'm going to have this as the backing and also as the binding. All right, so I hope you enjoyed making the Bachelor's puzzle mini quilt today. If you did, don't forget to give us a thumbs up down below, hit that subscribe button and the little bell icon beside it, and then that way you won't miss out on any future posts. And join me again next fortnight for another quilt block from DD's quilting challenge that we've got going over in DD's quilting and crafting group. It is the the A to Z quilt block challenge. So each block that I'm doing actually, so this one was the Bachelor's puzzles, which is for B, and last fortnight I done the autumn tint. All right, well that's it from me today. Have a great week everybody. I'll see you all again next time. Take care and bye for now.